The scorching Arizona sun beats down mercilessly on cracked earth. Not a cloud in the crystalline sky. The camera slowly pans across a landscape that looks like the bones of the earth itself, white bleached rocks, skeletal remains of cattle scattered across dried creek beds, and dying mesquite trees clinging desperately to life. Elena Nailnish kneels beside the lifeless body of her last pregnant cow, her weathered hands touching the swollen belly that will never give birth. Her dark eyes, framed by premature lines carved by desert wind and loss, stare at the empty water trough nearby. The silence is deafening, no lowing of cattle, no trickling of water, just the whisper of hot wind through dead grass. She stands slowly, brushing the dust from her worn leather skirt, and walks toward the dried creek bed that once provided life to everything on her small ranch. Her bare feet know every stone, every root, every depression in this land that her grandmother's grandmother once called home before the soldiers came. The creek bed tells a story of betrayal. Fresh boot prints lead upstream, and Elena follows them with the tracking skills her father taught her before the cavalry took him to San Carlos. The prints are large, deep, belonging to a heavy man wearing expensive boots. Beside them, the telltale marks of machinery being dragged across the desert floor. Elena climbs a small ridge and stops dead. In the distance, where the creek should flow freely from the hidden spring in the rocks, a massive steam-powered pump chugs rhythmically, its black smoke staining the clear sky. Wooden channels have been built to divert every drop of water toward the vast Blake Ranch, where green pastures mock the surrounding wasteland. Her jaw tightens. This is not just theft of water, this is theft of life itself. Elena makes her way back to her small adobe house, its thick walls offering blessed relief from the heat. Inside, the sparse furnishings tell the story of a woman making do with little, a simple wooden table her late husband Miguel carved, a few tin plates, and in the corner, carefully wrapped in deer hide, the wedding dress her Apache mother had beaded by hand before the world changed forever. She unwraps a small leather pouch and counts out the few silver coins inside. $3.40. Not enough to buy feed for the surviving animals, certainly not enough to fight Harrison Blake in court, assuming any court would listen to an Apache woman. The sound of approaching horses breaks the silence. Elena peeks through the small window and sees 3 riders approaching, Harrison Blake himself, unmistakable in his black suit despite the heat, flanked by 2 men wearing deputy badges but carrying themselves like hired guns. Elena steps outside, standing straight despite knowing she faces overwhelming odds. Blake dismounts with the casual arrogance of a man who believes he owns everything his eyes can see. "Mrs. Nailnish," Blake says, removing his hat with mock politeness. His pale blue eyes are cold as winter stones. "I trust you've had time to consider my generous offer." "There was no offer," Elena replies in English carefully practiced to hide any trace of accent. "Only theft." Blake's smile doesn't reach his eyes. "Now, that's harsh language for a woman in your position. A widow, alone, trying to make a go of it in country that's not meant for your kind." He gestures toward the dead cattle. "Seems like nature itself is telling you something. Nature didn't build that pump. Progress built that pump. American progress. Something your people never quite understood." Blake steps closer, his voice dropping to a tone that carries implied threat. "I'm being more than fair, offering to buy this land at all. Most folks around here think Indians shouldn't own property outside the reservation anyway." Elena's hands remain steady at her sides, but her voice carries the quiet strength of people who have survived the unsurvivable. "My husband bought this land legally. We have papers. Papers can be challenged. Especially when certain questions arise about whether Indians can legally purchase land without specific government approval." Blake's smile turns predatory. "Could tie up the courts for years. Cost more money than you'll see in a lifetime." One of the deputies, a thin man with nervous eyes, speaks up. "Mr. Blake, maybe we should." "Should what, Deputy Morrison?" Blake's voice cuts like a whip. "Should let lawlessness stand? Should ignore proper development of territorial resources?" He turns back to Elena. "Mrs. Nailnish, I'm offering you one last chance to walk away with something. $50 for the land, and I'll personally ensure safe passage back to San Carlos." This is my home. This is dead earth owned by a dead man's widow. Blake remounts his horse. You have until tomorrow sundown to reconsider. After that. He shrugs. Well, accidents happen out here in the desert. People disappear. Especially people who don't belong. The three men ride away, leaving Elena standing alone in a cloud of dust. As the sound of hoofbeats fades, she walks back to the dried creek bed and kneels, placing her palm flat against the sandy bottom where water once flowed. Her grandmother had told her stories of this place, of springs that never failed and grass that grew green even in the driest years. The old woman had also told her that water always remembers its path, always seeks to return home, like the spirits of those who have passed beyond. Elena closes her eyes and listens, not with her ears, but with something deeper, something Blake and his kind could never understand. Beneath the silence, beneath the heat and dust and death, she hears something that makes her eyes snap open. The faint sound of running water, somewhere deep underground. As the sun begins its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, Elena walks back to her house with a new purpose. She may be alone, she may be outnumbered, and she may be running out of time, but she is Apache, daughter of a people who found water in the heart of the desert and life in the face of death. The water remembers its path. And tomorrow, Elena will remind it how to come home. The camera pulls back as she disappears into her house, the vast emptiness of the desert around her small homestead emphasizing both her isolation and her determination. In the distance, the black smoke from Blake's pump continues to stain the sky, a mechanical violation of ancient rhythms. But somewhere, deep beneath the earth, water moves in darkness, patient as stone, waiting to rise. The pre-dawn darkness wraps around Elena like her grandmother's old blanket as she prepares for what may be her final day on this land. She moves through her small house by memory, gathering the tools she will need, her late husband's shovel, a coil of rope, and from the wooden chest beneath her bed, a small leather pouch containing items that speak to older ways of knowing. Elena steps outside into air still cool from the desert night. Above her, stars fade as the eastern horizon begins to blush with the promise of another scorching day. She has perhaps 6 hours before the heat becomes unbearable, 6 hours before Blake's deadline, 6 hours to attempt something that might be madness or might be salvation. She walks back to the creek bed, but this time she doesn't follow Blake's boot prints upstream. Instead, she turns toward a cluster of ancient cottonwood trees that somehow still stand despite the drought, their roots reaching deep into secrets the earth has kept for centuries. Elena kneels beside the largest tree and places her ear against its trunk. The old Apache ways whisper through her memory, her father's voice teaching her to read the language of the desert, to understand what the land is trying to say to those who know how to listen. Trees like these don't survive without water. They may appear to be dying, but their roots know where life still flows. She begins to dig at the base of the cottonwood, her movements careful and deliberate. The earth here is different, darker, with a moisture that hasn't been seen on the surface for months. Each shovelful reveals soil that remembers rain, that has been touched by underground streams flowing through limestone and sandstone channels carved by time itself. The sun climbs higher, and Elena's shirt becomes soaked with sweat as she works. 3 feet down, 4 feet, 5. Her hands blister despite their calluses, but she doesn't stop. Then, at nearly 6 feet deep, her shovel strikes something that isn't earth. Stone. Smooth, water-worn stone. Elena clears the dirt away with her hands, revealing a natural shelf of rock that forms a small underground chamber. And there, seeping slowly but steadily from a crack in the limestone, is water. Clear, cold water that pools in the rocky depression before disappearing into sand and gravel below. She cups her hands and tastes it. Sweet. Clean. Untouched by Blake's machinery or the contamination that comes with desperate measures. This is the source her grandmother spoke of in the old stories, the hidden spring that sustained her people through the worst droughts, the water that flows from the sacred places where earth and sky meet. But finding the water is only the beginning. Elena needs help to channel it, to protect it, and most importantly, to defend it from Blake when he discovers what she has done. As if summoned by her thoughts, the sound of a single horse approaching breaks the morning silence. Elena climbs out of the hole, her hand instinctively moving to the knife at her belt, then relaxes as she recognizes the rider. Taza sits his horse like a man half his age, though Elena knows he has seen more than 70 winters. His weathered face, mapped with lines that tell stories of resistance and survival, breaks into a smile when he sees the evidence of her work. "My eyes did not deceive me yesterday," he says in Apache, dismounting with fluid grace. The granddaughter of Yellow Bird Woman has remembered the old teachings. Elena responds in their shared language, the words feeling like coming home after a long journey in foreign lands. "The water called to me, uncle. But I cannot protect it alone." Taza walks to the edge of the hole and nods approvingly. Blake's men passed through Tucson yesterday, bragging about clearing out the last stubborn Indian by sundown today. They spoke as if victory was already theirs. His dark eyes, still sharp as obsidian, meet hers. They do not know what they face. They face only a woman with dirty hands and a deeper hole than she can manage alone. They face the daughter of people who made water flow in the desert when their ancestors were still huddling in caves across the Great Water. Taza's voice carries the authority of one who has seen empires rise and fall. "But you are right about needing help. I did not come alone." As if his words were a signal, 3 more riders emerge from behind a distant ridge. Elena tenses, then relaxes as she recognizes them, not Blake's men, but faces from town she has seen before. The first is Roberto Santos, a Mexican vaquero whose small spread northwest of town has been struggling with the same water shortage. Behind him rides Tom Morrison, the nervous deputy from yesterday, though now he wears no badge. The third rider surprises her most of all, Sarah McKenna, a widow from town whose husband died in a mine accident last spring. Roberto dismounts and removes his hat respectfully. "Senora Nailnish, we heard about your troubles. We have troubles of our own." Tom Morrison looks around nervously, as if expecting Blake to materialize from the desert air. "I quit this morning. Couldn't stomach what Blake's planning. The man's talking about bringing in gunmen from Tombstone, claiming you're a threat to territorial development." Sarah McKenna, a woman whose Irish accent still colors her words despite 20 years in the territory, steps forward with the directness Elena has always admired. "Blake's been buying up water rights all through the valley, using that damned pump to steal from everyone downstream. Small ranchers, farmers, even the town well is running low. If you found a way to fight back, we want to help." Elena looks at the unlikely group assembled before her, Apache, Mexican, Irish, and even a former lawman who chose conscience over security. In another time, another place, these people might have been enemies. But the desert makes its own rules, and shared hardship creates alliances that would have been impossible in gentler lands. "The water is here," Elena says simply, gesturing toward the hole. "But reaching it will require more than one person can do. And protecting it." She looks toward the distant smoke of Blake's pump. "That will require all of us." Taza speaks in Apache, then translates for the others. She says the earth has offered us a gift, but gifts must be earned through work and sacrifice. For the next 4 hours, they work as if their lives depend on it, which, Elena reflects, may literally be true. Roberto brings experience with irrigation from his father's ranch in Sonora. Tom contributes knowledge of local law and Blake's likely tactics. Sarah proves surprisingly strong and determined, wielding a shovel with the fury of someone who has lost too much already. But it is Taza's wisdom that guides them, reading the stone and soil like a book written in an ancient language. Under his direction, they widen the natural chamber, creating a reservoir that can hold precious water. They dig channels that will carry flow away from Blake's prying eyes, hiding their lifeline beneath the desert's deceptive surface. As the sun reaches its merciless peak, they complete their work. Clean water flows steadily into the hidden reservoir, then through carefully constructed channels toward Elena's ranch and beyond. For the first time in months, there is the sound of water moving across thirsty earth. Elena is checking the final channel when the ground begins to vibrate with approaching horses. Many horses, moving fast. Blake has returned, and he has brought reinforcements. The group assembles behind a low ridge as 8 riders approach Elena's house. Blake leads them, but the men behind him are not deputies. They are hard-faced men who wear their guns like tools of trade, mercenaries from the lawless towns along the border where violence is currency and mercy is weakness. Blake's voice carries across the desert air as he shouts toward Elena's house. "Mrs. Nailnish. Time's up. Come out and we'll make this quick and clean." When no answer comes, Blake signals his men. They spread out, surrounding the small adobe building with practiced efficiency. 2 men kick in the door while others cover the windows. When they emerge empty-handed, Blake's face darkens with rage. "She's running," he snarls. "Probably heading for the reservation. Johnson, take 3 men and—" His words are cut off by a sound that stops every man in his tracks. The sound of running water. Blake spins toward the creek bed, his face going pale as he sees what should be impossible. Clear water flows where there has been only dust for months, pooling in the natural depression where Elena's cattle once drank, continuing downstream in a steady current that sparkles in the afternoon sun. What the hell? Blake strides toward the creek, his men following uncertainly. They trace the water upstream, past Elena's house, toward the cottonwood grove where fresh earth and the sound of picks hitting stone tell the story of the morning's work. Elena steps out from behind the largest tree, no longer alone. Taza emerges beside her, his presence radiating the quiet authority of generations. Roberto, Tom, and Sarah follow, each carrying tools that could serve as weapons if necessary. Blake stares at them for a long moment, his mind struggling to process this unexpected alliance. When he speaks, his voice carries the frustrated rage of a man whose careful plans have been destroyed by people he considered beneath notice. "You think you're clever, don't you? Think you've outsmarted progress itself?" Blake gestures toward his hired guns. "I've got 8 men with me, and the law on my side. You've got a few desperate farmers and a dried-up old Indian." Taza's laugh is like wind through canyon rocks, carrying echoes of older powers. "Young man, I have seen cavalry generals make the same mistake you are making now. They also believed that numbers and weapons were the only kinds of strength that mattered." Elena steps forward, her voice steady despite the odds they face. "This water comes from land that my people have protected for 1,000 years. It flows according to laws older than your territory, older than your government, older than your idea of ownership." Blake's hand moves toward his gun, but stops as Tom Morrison speaks from behind Elena. "Actually, Blake, there's something you should know about the law." The former deputy's voice is stronger now, freed from the weight of a badge that served corruption instead of justice. "I've been doing some reading since I quit. Turns out there are federal statutes about territorial water rights that you might find interesting." Blake's eyes narrow. "What kind of statutes?" "The kind that say Native American water rights predate all territorial claims. The kind that make your pump illegal the moment you started stealing water from indigenous sources." Tom's smile is grim. "The kind that could land you in federal prison." For the first time since arriving, Blake looks uncertain. His hired guns shift nervously, sensing their employer's confidence wavering. A job that seemed simple, intimidating a lone Indian woman, has become something far more complicated. Elena seizes the moment, her voice carrying across the desert like the call of hawks that circle high overhead. "You can leave now, Mr. Blake. Take your men, take your pump, and find water that belongs to you. Or you can try to take what isn't yours, and learn what my grandmother learned when the cavalry came, that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost." The silence stretches like a drawn bowstring. Blake's hand hovers near his gun while his men wait for orders that don't come. In that moment, the balance of power shifts like water finding its natural course. It is Taza who breaks the silence, his words carrying the weight of prophecy. "The earth remembers everything, Blake. Every drop of stolen water, every broken promise, every act of greed that wounds the sacred places. You can silence voices, but you cannot silence the land itself." Blake looks around at the faces arrayed against him, the determined Apache woman, the ancient warrior, the unlikely allies who have chosen justice over safety. He sees something in their eyes that his hired guns cannot match, the kind of resolve that comes from fighting for home rather than money. "This isn't over," Blake says finally, but his words lack conviction. He signals his men, and they mount their horses with the defeated air of mercenaries who have realized they are on the wrong side of something larger than themselves. As the sound of hoofbeats fades into the vast silence of the desert, Elena kneels beside the flowing water and cups her hands to drink. The water tastes of ancient promises kept, of earth and stone, and the patient endurance of people who understand that some victories are measured not in days or seasons, but in generations. The sun begins its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky in shades of victory and hope. Elena has kept her land, her water, and her dignity. More importantly, she has proven that even in the harshest landscape, life finds a way to flow toward those who respect its sacred sources. In the distance, Blake's pump falls silent for the first time in months, its black smoke no longer staining the clear desert sky. The water has remembered its path home, and Elena Nailnish has remembered who she is, daughter of the desert, keeper of ancient wisdom, protector of the gifts that flow from the deep places where earth and sky meet in eternal conversation.